So with this, I will again officially welcome you. This is our 13th online gathering for congregational leaders, sponsored by the ELCA Coaching Ministry. I am Jill Beverlin. I'm the coordinator of coaching for the ELCA, and I'm one of your facilitators today. We want to welcome everyone, especially those who are joining us for the first time. And as we enter this space, it's important for you to know that these gatherings are designed to be a safe place for church leaders to bring the truth of who they are and how they are doing in the midst of this time. We are intentional about inviting guest speakers to offer their thoughts and experience on topics that you, the leaders of our denomination, have brought to us as points of concern. In addition to our presentations, we build in an opportunity to join a small group discussion facilitated by one of our ELCA coaches. This is meant to be a space for leaders to find the freedom to explore where they are at in this process, and in doing so, potentially name their next most faithful step forward. With this, I now call on my colleague and friend, Deacon Tammy Devine, ELCA's coordinator for stewardship and discipleship coaching, to bring us an additional word of welcome and centering. Tammy.
Thank you. We indeed have this opportunity to be a bridge from our morning to the opportunity for us to be community together, and then to even jump into a safer space together. So I began with a word, a poem written by Joyce Rupp, Gratitude for the Little Moments. Gratitude, yes, for all the big things that stand tall, thick with abundance, joy, fruitfulness. I cannot help but applaud their presence. But deep thankfulness for the bite-sized pieces in my life, I had not thought of them. Those little snippets of time so easily consumed in the hurry and blur of pretentious days. The little moments, assumed and presumed, slip quickly throughout the fingers of our busy lives. These fleeting moments of grace in things quickly passing, a walk on a musky wooded path, a cup of coffee silently savored, a bird song in the squeaky hours of dawn, the gentle touch of a liver-spotted hand, a loving letter from a grateful stranger, a fading crescent moon in a royal blue sky. I turn to gather finely layered remnants like these in the come and go of my days, and discover with surprise how quickly my inner room is a harvest place of gold. Well, science has taught us and found that there's lots of benefits to gratitude. It boosts our immunity, so physical well-being. It helps us combat that negative self-talk that tends to occupy our space, so it helps us emotionally and helps us to see how God is present in our lives, so it helps us spiritually. Portico has long embraced and valued and continues to accompany you as leaders within our church to live well as whole and holy people of God, to be resilient. Brene Brown says, practicing spirit is what brings healing and creates resilience. So today we have the privilege of welcoming Reverend Jeff Thiemann, the CEO and president of Portico Benefit Services. He began his call in 2011 to serve the church, passionate about solving the complex issues around healthcare and retirement planning. He continues to bring that passion throughout our church to congregations, to individuals like you, and to our greater community. And so we welcome him today as we together are in the midst of this COVID-19 and we are church together. We thank you for bringing a word to us this day. Welcome, Jeff.
Well, thank you. And it is great to see, 3 pages full of smiling faces. I thank you for welcoming me into your living rooms, your sunrooms, your bedrooms, your, welcoming me into your home. So thank you for that. I call my talk, and I'm gonna switch and share the screen here. I decided to call this "Hello ELCA, how are you?" Because I thought it would be good to take a bit of a dive. We'll start from the top and we'll work our way down to look at what we're seeing inside the ELCA. And this whole issue of emotional well-being is not a new concern for us. And I'll show you some data that has really informed our choices for 2019 and 2020. But if you look at the headlines, and I'm sure you've seen headlines like this, where because of the COVID situation, the level of stress and the resulting problems that we're all experiencing are just going through the roof. And even, including the Wall Street Journal is talking about the stress within churches. So this is not new, but it's maybe even more acute. Now, I don't know, I don't need to give you a big introduction to Portico, but this is a slide that I often use when I'm talking about Portico. I put this into my presentation today because I wanted to remind you that this idea of caring for church workers is not new to us Lutherans. We've been at it for over 200 years. 1783, by the way, 6 years before George Washington was inaugurated president, the Lutheran Church here in this country started providing benefits to church workers and their families. And as you well know, the work of rostered ministers and other church workers is both emotionally rewarding and challenging. In your call, you support individuals in your congregations and in your communities by listening, offering emotional support, and also helping your congregations navigating changing financial realities, generational needs, and the continually changing ELCA landscape. Some of you do this in relative isolation, even more so now, but many of you cope with geographic separation from colleagues. I see coaches as another way that we invest in the lives of church workers, and appreciate the invitation today to share my perspective about our shared mission and how we can make a significant impact together. As a note, while I was serving a congregation in the Sierra Pacific before taking this call at Portico, I went through the training and became an ELCA coach, and then coached pastors in my synod, and really appreciated that whole program. So let's start off. Let me start off at a high level, looking at those that we serve. Over 40,000 people, sponsored, retired, inactive, and their family members. Our health plan serves over 17,000 of those members. You all know that church workers balance conflicting forces, the need to maintain professional boundaries while also being deeply connected in the communities where we all serve. And this is one of the unique things that makes your vocation stressful. Unlike an ER doc or a firefighter or a police officer that intervenes in a stressful situation and then generally steps away from it, most church workers develop deep relationships within the communities they serve and then experience secondary traumatic stress at significantly higher rates than most other professions. You've all seen the wholeness wheel. It reflects our call to care for our whole selves. By integrating the interconnected dimensions of well-being, we are able to live well in Christ and pass on our faith through how we live. We know that healthy, resilient leaders shape healthy, resilient faith communities. Unfortunately, unhealthy leaders shape unhealthy systems. Leaders are expected to tend their well-being in all dimensions of the wholeness wheel. And within the context of whole person well-being, Portico is responsible for providing cost-effective benefits, resources, and inspiration to help leaders strengthen their financial, emotional, and physical well-being. Today, I'll share with you how we look at the needs of those that we serve in order to offer more appropriate programs and services. Many sources of data point to increased risk for mental health concerns for church workers. This is not new. We've heard this directly from health plan members in self-reported data. We see higher claims than the average population, and we know this from studies that have been done across multiple denominations. So let's dive in. This shows our top 5 most costly chronic diagnosis groups. I'm going to talk about dollars and then also people and cases. We started working through this data in 2019. What you see here is full year comparisons between 2018 and 2017. And we are continuing to monitor trends. We see the same breakdown in 2019 and moving into 2020. Now, when you look at this chart and think about the treatment of mental disorders, they aren't very expensive. They're the 4th on the list. This shows where they rank in context of the other conditions. So top is neoplasms, that's cancer. Then circulatory system, that's heart disease and hypertension. Then you've got musculoconnectivity tissue, that's joint surgery, knee and hip replacements, arthritis, and then mental disorders. This covers behavioral, depressive, anxiety, and mood disorders. And then 5th is nervous system sense organs. This is primarily eye disorders, but also other nervous system conditions. So to have mental disorders listed there was something we knew we needed to take a deeper look at. Medical claims were increasing year over year for mental disorders. You can see that trend and you can see the dollars. So let's take a deeper dive. This is a screenshot from our analytics tool that gives us more visibility into our population. Our tool aggregates information into groups. Level 1 would be mental disorders, and then we're drilling down one more level to see mood, anxiety, and adjustment-related disorders based on the counts there in the 2nd column. We can see that the opportunity to help the most people with a program would need to include mood, anxiety, and adjustment-related disorders based on the counts here in the 2nd column. In the top right, you can see that the overall trend of mental disorders is 3.4% year over year. And look at mood, anxiety, adjustment, and miscellaneous disorders. We see an increase in number of cases of 6.7 for mood disorders, 6.3% for anxiety disorders, 8.9% for adjustment, and then 5.6 for other mental health diagnoses. This is the year to year from 2017 to 2018. So as we saw earlier, our members are called into communities. It's very important for us also to remember that if one of our members changes calls, it may mean a complete new environment, community, or daily set of habits. And we want to find ways to address this trend of mental disorders and give anyone who finds use in it a set of practices to remain healthy in times of change or distress, which is just a natural part of our calling. So we knew that total costs and claim trends were increasing. But what started to coalesce the need for solutions, more solutions within mental health well-being, was when we modeled the per member per month cost in 2 cohorts. Those who had a mental disorder claim in 2018 compared to those who did not. And here you can see that the per member per month cost was close to 2.5 times more for members who had a mental disorder claim. It gets more interesting. What does that breakdown look like when you think about the entire picture? The breakdown of cost shows the cohort, again, that has that medical spend of 2.5 times more than the rest of the population. But notice that only 16% of that spend is in behavioral health or psychiatric care. That's the gray bar on the left. What we're seeing here is how mental health can impact physical health and of course, total well-being, which really roots us back to our benefit philosophy of whole person well-being. Now step away from the dollars for a moment and consider the amount of time and energy it takes to deal with a complex set of health issues. What a difference it makes in readiness to lead and to serve if someone is getting the right care to deal with these complexities. So, some conclusions from this deep dive that we have done over the last few years on the aggregate data. Regardless of what we're spending on emotional health, the fact that it affects so many people and that the cost is so much higher than the benchmark, and we know that dealing with stress, burnout, and depression is becoming more the norm in our population, we've got to do something. We also knew that when faced with emotional health issues, physical health and whole person well-being also tend to suffer, further complicating our ELCA community's health needs. For our wellness strategy, we started with what we knew we wanted and what our members were asking for. We started with our concept of wholeness, the wholeness wheel there, and thought, what if we could take our identity and build a wellness strategy that encompasses all 7 facets into one well-being platform, something we had never been able to do before. We had utilized secular alternatives in the past, which mostly incorporated physical health, some bits of emotional and financial health, but we knew that we needed to go further. And what's more, we wanted our wellness strategy to be a launching pad, kind of an invitation for our at-risk populations who may not have started our programs. Obviously, if you have an acute issue, you access your healthcare system, but what if you're earlier and feeling less severe issues? We wanted the core of our wellness to be education with calls to action that connect our members to our unique point solutions and vendor partners. So after extensive research, we found a partner that helped translate our vision into reality. And we built our first 2 custom programs that focus on burnout and being a faith leader with the help of our very own members as instructors. You may recognize some of the people that you see here. Clearly, additional support was needed to address the members' entire continuum of mental health care needs, from check-ins and support for at-risk members to more direct interventions for those with chronic conditions. Portico's benefit professionals determined a proactive approach to help members, including rostered ministers and other church workers, get necessary care. A holistic video learning platform called the Being Academy, operated by the Big No, supports comprehensive well-being by delivering short video courses taught by best-selling authors and leading researchers. We've designed it so that there are a variety of interactions within the user experience, including polls, resources, and discussions. We are able to assess how users interact with the polls and resources, which helps us learn and push the concept further. Additionally, this platform is designed to be educational and inform our members of steps they can take if they so choose. Again, invitation is really a key part of how we look at this. We have direct calls to action in each course, and you can see on the right side of the picture there that I'm sharing, these are the top courses that have been taken so far. This was just introduced in January of 2020. To personalize the Being Academy for our membership, Portico partnered with the Big No to add faith-based elements to most of its courses. So these are not the same courses that another company would get. These are really customized to the ELCA community. And we added 2 new custom courses to our curriculum. A course on gratitude. I was so happy to hear gratitude early on. Thank you, Tammy. Course on gratitude and spiritual recharging taught by religion and culture scholar Diana Butler Bass. And a course on vocational well-being featuring ELCA rostered ministers sharing ways to avoid burnout and grow as spiritual leaders. I'm going to share a video trailer with you called Beating Burnout. Hold on one second. And this is just a preview of one of the courses in the vocational well-being.
In the end, if we aren't healthy, if we aren't functioning well, we're not much good to other people.
If I have a bad day at work, somebody's died. That's a hard thing.
Sure, there are demands in anyone's job, but it was the way I felt I had to perform that job that was over the top.
We change every day. Every day we wake up is a new person.
The healthier you are as an individual, the healthier you will be as a husband, as a father, as a pastor, a doctor, a nurse. Pick your vocation, right?
And it also helps me to be able to say no to other people.
The church is disruption for some people and it's comfort for others.
Look at the strengths that you do have in your congregation and figure out how to empower them.
You can't be anyone's pastor unless they want you to be.
This is truly a God moment. We're being led boldly into the future.
My spiritual life and the relationship with God leads me to everything I do and say.
At the end of the day, it's about the people that we're called to serve as a church.
And we're all doing this work because we love people.
Well, I am so appreciative of the amazing gifts that we have across the ELCA and the willingness of these folks to share what they have learned and what they are seeing. I'm not sure, am I sharing the, sorry about that. I'm gonna start over to make sure that I'm sharing the right screen. Okay, I think I'm back. So we also know that COVID-19 has multiplied the level of stress within ELCA leadership. And in addition to the tools that I have described so far that are available to our health plan members, this podcast, Beyond Normal, is a brand new podcast put together by the folks at The Big No. And it's available on their website. They bring together experts that are talking specifically around what is a new normal and how do we grow beyond this, and really a lot about self-care. So I commend that to you. A second solution that we added in 2020, and this is at no out-of-pocket cost for health plan members, is a clinically validated online self-directed cognitive behavioral therapy mental health program operated by Learn to Live. It offers 5 different treatment tracks: depression, anxiety, sleep, stress and worry, and substance abuse. And the numbers may look small there on the right-hand side. This is the number of people that have started in the first quarter. I can tell you, much like many other programs that we launch within the ELCA, we have a faster take-up rate within the ELCA than their other clients. So we just have great engagement within the ELCA. Just a reminder, we continue to have the EAP resources that are quite generous relative to industry norms. We've got good usage of that. It's available, 6 in-person EAP sessions or over the web or over the phone. That really makes a lot of sense for this time that we're in here. So just kind of stepping back, the way we look at this is we need to provide a care continuum of programs, services, and resources that serve everyone from healthy to at risk to those with chronic complex issues. We do know that early, less intensive intervention helps people delay or prevent more intensive intervention later on. And again, you should know that in general, ELCA plan members do a much better job accessing care earlier in that cycle than the general population. So again, that's just one of the great things. What I found in my call here at Portico is that if we can explain things well, what we're doing and why we're doing it, the take-up rate is really great. Okay, so I know you're going to have breakout rooms for discussions. And just in summary of where we are as the ELCA, we know that this issue of emotional well-being is critically important. We have done things to be leaders in this as Lutherans. We've been way ahead, and that's really good. But there are opportunities to get even better and to have people use that. And so as you transition into breakout rooms, I know you've got some questions. I added 3 questions that I invite you to consider. And again, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to serve you at Portico in this call. And thank you for letting me be with you today.
Okay, friends, thank you again, Jeff, for the unique lens that you have and for sharing all of the holistic resources that we have. Just looking at the chat section, people are blown away. It's just another case where God's provision has been abundant, and having someone in the know point specifically this and this and this, and now there are all the options, and now you all get to jump into a small group discussion again to name where you're at today, really focused on how things are with your soul. That's an important thing to sort out first. And then secondarily, start to sort through this great information, and with the assistance of the questions coming from the coaches in your room, start to sort out what's one small step that you can take today toward caring for self and wellness. Because without that, friends, we cannot love and serve one another well. With this, we will transition into our small groups. A couple of housekeeping things that are important. You will have to click the join button in order to get to that small group. I will bring us all back a little before the hour. I'll give you a 5-minute warning so you know that that's coming and you can transition appropriately. And a second really important thing, if you get to your room and you're the only one there, or you feel like a coach hasn't made it in the room with you, every once in a while there's someone that wishes to be in a bit larger room, and that's something that you desire. Or if you have any questions, just click the ask for help button and I'll pop into the room and I'll do everything I can to help you get what you need. So with that, know that God goes with you in these discussions, and may the Spirit bless all that transpires. So here you go. So welcome back, everyone. I think that our rooms are all closed. And so without betraying the confidence of your small group discussion buddies, we would love to hear a little bit about some themes that were surfacing as you were having discussions. And you can unmute and share, or choose to put them in the chat area.
Well, in our group, I think there were 2 things that really jumped out. One is the varying levels of grief over numerous things, the loss of the way things have been, grieving not being together, grieving the loss of these milestones like graduation, loss of trust in leadership, and also the stigma of mental health. We can talk about a lot of health issues and wellness, but mental health seems the last great divide.
Our group talked, we were a small group, but we talked a lot about it. And part of it's because my story is that I have a parent who lives daily with a mental illness. And if you check the chat box I just shared, I didn't tell anyone about my family story till I was 16 years old, because I saw the stigma that came with it. My pondering for Jeff is, I'm wondering if numbers are also going up because people are more open to talk about it and are more willing to get the treatment these days.
Yeah, so let me jump in here. I saw the question, two people ask a similar question. And so yes, I would say number one, and this is healthy, that more people are willing to ask for it. I also think that within the, if you think about our rostered ministers in the ELCA, we all have to get a master's degree. So we value that education for vocational readiness. And I think that we, in general, we're more willing to then seek out expertise because we value expertise that we see, that we've been trained and the people that trained us and our colleagues and so on. So there are some factors there which I think make us more ready. Are we as willing as would be most healthy? No, there still is stigma here. And again, I mentioned the isolation, about the rural isolation. I hear this where the only therapist in town, there's one therapist in town, and I do not want to cross that door because of how my congregation members will see me. So the availability of remote resources, video and so on that we're bringing now, what we're hearing is that is just spectacularly useful for some of those folks. So there's a lot of good news in this, but it's a journey. And I would, as we tell our stories and as we talk about how we have dealt with these things, gotten help, reached out, please help me. That is just so important. And then, someone asked about our profession. People that study different vocations have said that being a parish pastor, this was the research that they did, was the most stressful occupation of any that they had analyzed. And they've got different ways that they analyze it. And a lot has to do with because of the expectation of being part of the community that we care for.
Wow, that's some deep insight. And if you glance at the chat area, some really honest sharing is happening about barriers. We have time for one more person to unmute and share about a theme that was raised in their small group.
More of a question than a theme, than a statement, Jill.
Sure, please, Larry.
One of the questions was, we had a couple of people in our group that do not have currently have ELCA coverage. They're under their spouse, and because they're under their spouse, they wanted to know if the services that the ELCA Portico offers, are those services available to them? Because they're, the employer one may not offer it, but are the ELCA? So, to you, Jeff.
And the answer is, for everything but the free podcast, the answer is no. All of those things are paid for out of the medical trust. And both from a stewardship standpoint and also by law, we are only allowed to spend those dollars in ways that benefit the beneficiaries of the trust, which is the plan members.
So if I can offer, I'm going to ask, if I can, Jill, a follow-up question, because my congregation is considering, I'm on the ELCA plan now, my congregation is considering me going on my spouse's plan. So that means I would lose the opportunity to be a part of all those other services. So it's not just the healthcare, it's all the rest of the services as well.
That's true. And what you see here is a design that is, as best we can do, is uniquely tailored to the needs of the ELCA.
Okay. Well, it sounds like some important questions are surfacing, and I encourage you to continue these conversations. And again, Jason has put in the chat area our website, the recording from this conversation, and other resources, including the great PowerPoint that Jeff shared, and some additional resources will be made available later this week as the recording is rendered. So thank you again, Jeff, for this really important sharing. As we are transitioning to our closing, I want to mention that although this meeting time is entitled Being Church in the Time of COVID-19, it does not mean that the pandemic is the only topic we will bring to our discussions. Next week, we hope you will return to our gathering as we connect the theme of wellness to the narrative of systemic racism in our country, and especially that which has broken open in a way in which it never has before because of the recent events. So we will be holding a space to explore our reactions to these atrocities, how it has collided with the threat of COVID-19, and we will wrestle with the faithful steps that God might be asking us to take in order to bring the Spirit's love and healing in a new way to this particularly turbulent time. And we are honored to announce that the Reverend Lamont Wells will be our guest speaker. You won't want to miss it next week, so come back again. And again, I want to say thank you to our faithful coaches. You steadfastly shepherd our small group conversations, and we appreciate you. So now I'm going to call on Barb Debsky. She is a regional representative for Portico, and she shared with me yesterday and gave me permission to share this with all of you, that she has the unique distinction of being the oldest person on her team. And because of this, she brings a trunk of experience and love to everything that she does. Barb, we are honored that you will bring us a final word and blessing today.
Thank you. There has to be some advantage to this getting older and gravity taking over the body. So if it's that I'm a little bit smarter, I'll take it. You know, we talked a lot about distress and how it affects us. And one of the big things that I've spent a lot of time listening to our Beyond Normal podcast and the articles that I'm reading is this whole balance that we have between our primitive brains and our prefrontal cortex that helps us make decisions in a little safer, more logical way. And in our primitive brains, that just sometimes can hijack us. And the problem is during this time of so much stress, such an incredible amount of stress, that the primitive part of our brain has just taken over. Our poor little prefrontal cortex that helps us balance things out has taken a suitcase and left because there's no room. It's being shoved to the side. The primitive brain often puts us into that fight or flight. What I have found is a switch in just how I'm dealing with stress during this time, and I think because it's so acute. So I used to dwell more in the land of the flight, you know, take a nap, read for hours. Lately, I'm spending much more time in the fight frame of mind, and I see that a lot in our country, in this meanness and this anger that's everywhere, and I think that's a lot of what's happening. Anne Lamott uses a wonderful phrase when she talks about it. She said, you know, you don't want to shove these feelings aside. They're normal feelings. You have to experience them or your head will explode. You don't have to have hate in and serve it a cup of tea. And I think that's such a good balance to say, it's okay to feel this stuff, but we have to find that balance when it starts consuming so much of our time that we're constantly in that fight frame of mind. We want to get a little more away from that and the trashy friends that he sometimes, I find, brings along with him, which is, you know, anxiety and worry and a crappy mood. Fortunately, you can hardly go anywhere online today and not bump into some resources. So even if you're not an ELCA member, you can certainly do the Beyond Normal podcast, and I can't recommend them enough. But exercise, use your community, no matter how we have to make it look today, and be joyful. That is probably one of the biggest things. Use your community, find some place to be joyful. It's going to make all the difference. Wendell Berry tells us, be joyful though you have considered all the facts. I love that line. And I just want to close briefly with a section of a prayer from one of my favorite people, Sarah Bessey. She says, I pray against the temptations of silence and despair and numb anger. I pray that you would run the race that is set before you, that you would flourish in your lane while cheering on every other runner alongside you. I pray you would look fear in the face and speak up anyway. I pray you would look hopelessness in the face and be the voice declaring the hope of the Lord for the redemption and the rescue and the renewal of things. Embracing God, I pray that for your boldness, that you embrace God, that your voice begins to rise, and that you may witness a new thing brewing. And may your very place of death become a story of unexpected resurrection. Blessings on your day, and thank you for this time together. It was wonderful. Amen.
Thank you, Barb. That was beautiful. And there are the tears again. And thanks to each one of you. You are making a positive difference in the world. You are God's hands and feet and ears and heart. Thank you for the healing and love that you are bringing. Thank you again, Jeff. What a blessing. What a timely, important message that you've brought to each of us. I'm sure that you're going to be overrun with questions now. And that's a good thing, because that means that people are accessing resources. So blessings on the rest of your week, everyone. God loves you. I love you. Let ELCA Coaching know how we can support your journey.